AM 560. The Answer.
Dan and Amy switching gears from our airline stories.
Clean up the smut, all right?
Yeah, exactly. Now we're pleased to be joined by our friend, former Michigan Congressman Mike Rogers, who is chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, also a former FBI special agent and officer in the U.S. Army. He's now the host, among other things, of the CNN show Declassified. Mike, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for this great setup in the segment before.
Yeah, I thought I thought you'd appreciate that.
As a guy who has my mailing address at seat 11B with Delta Airlines, I appreciate it very much.
Well, it's
just be careful who you sit next to.
It's a cautionary tale. Exactly.
Apparently.
Yeah, exactly. You're welcome.
Apparently.
Yeah. So why don't we start in
I've done a lot of flying. I can say that no one has ever, urinated on me.
It's kind of like it's kind of like what they say about motorcycles. If you're a motorcycle rider, you haven't been in an accident yet.
Oh.
So it's kind of the same thing.
All right,
flying.
thank you for that.
Yeah.
Can't wait to get on the plane this afternoon.
Let's start in Syria and what happens now with the apparent driving ISIS out of Raqqa. Is that still going to be a state of sorts that is lorded over by a war criminal like Assad? Is that going to break up? What are America's interests? What are next steps in Syria?
Yeah, and this is really important to remember. This is a very, very important blow to ISIS, both psychologically. This was their headquarters. This is where they developed all those propaganda videos. This is where they raised money. This is where they did all their command and control for ISIS operations on the battlefield and terrorist attacks around the world. So taking Raqqa has always been, for those of us in the national security space, a very important event in the slide down. Now, that doesn't mean that they are done. There's a few pockets of them. And what they're going to do is switch their game to terrorism activities, as they have, but you're likely to see more, as you saw the MI5, the British version of the FBI guy, come out and say, we're just at the brim. I've never seen this many threats coming at us this fast. So all of that is going to happen. This is going to be the second phase. People understood that there would be this phase where they're just not going away. They're going to switch to terrorist activities. The rest of Syria is still up for grabs, and I think you're going to see the Turks hopefully sit down with the Syrian government and try to work out a plan. Unfortunately, we'll have to be dealing with the Russians in that discussion.
Do you have any inside information on the four soldiers who were killed in Niger during that ISIS ambush?
There are some missions that our military conduct are clandestine by nature. And so these are Green Berets. And the Green Berets tend to have a training, get-to-know villagers kind of a mission that's a little bit different than the door-kicking Delta Force Navy SEAL kind of a mission. These are still highly trained, very specialized kind of soldiers. And so when something like this happens, it was probably a deliberate attack on a mission to try to win the hearts and minds of folks to help the U.S. government and the government of Niger cooperate in pushing out either ISIS or Al-Shabaab or whatever other organization that they have been targeting at the time. So unfortunately, when you're out there like they are, this kind of thing is possible. You never want to see it happen. Normally, they're pretty good at forecasting things like this, and unfortunately, they do very dangerous missions, and this is one that claimed their lives.
The reports are that U.S. African Command is working to investigate what happened, to put together an hour-by-hour timeline. You haven't had those details yet, and now because of the politicization of the deaths of these men, you have people asking questions that weren't asking any questions about Benghazi, but that's sort of a separate issue. But is it unusual for an investigation into something like this to take a little bit of time to make sure that military intelligence has it right before they disclose details of what they believe happened to the public?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely, I do. And remember, they are likely to have been operating in a very remote area. And, certain forces knew where they were, but it's not easy to get to them. I mean, these are really dangerous missions that these guys do. And so yeah, you should take your time. You should get it right. You should, as you all know, I've been in the heart of something where everyone wants a conclusion to their investigation in the way they want it. And sometimes, I hate to tell people, the facts just don't get you there. And so be patient. They'll get it right. And they'll do it because there'll be other military investigators investigating the deaths of military men in a dangerous operation. And we shouldn't lose sight of that. This whole shooting back and forth about who cares more about soldiers dying in the line of duty is just so maddening to me.
Yeah.
This is not about any of that. This is about the lives of these soldiers who committed themselves to something bigger than themselves, and they've given their full devotion in the accomplishment of that mission, and we should care more about that. I mean, that's what we need to care about. These guys, everybody that puts themselves out there like that is a hero. And we need to focus on that, not who did it or when the letter arrived or when it didn't arrive. And this is, to me, is a kind of a shameful display about how we treat the men and women who serve the country.
Absolutely. He is former Michigan Congressman and House Intel Chairman Mike Rogers, the host of CNN's Declassified. You want to check out Season 2 of Declassified. Mike, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having us.
And he joined us on our Turnkey.Pro answer line. Coming up on